We had Santa Claus in here yesterday, and we've got someone older than Santa Claus here today, L.C. McMurphy. L.C., good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, Jim Dale. You didn't do me any favors making me follow Santa Claus.
Well, he told me that all the naughties were gone off the list this year,
saw that.
Except oh, it's an honor to have L.C. with us this morning, and we go back a lot of years, and I don't know, B.B. Comer is something that just hung with you all of these years. How did you get started there?
Well, Jimmy Dale is all part of God's plan. I was due to graduate in 1964. B.B. Comer wouldn't even been an option then. But the only time I've ever failed anything, I failed a psychology class, which made me have to go an extra quarter. So I went not a whole extra year, but part of an extra year, which made me graduate in 65. And on 3 days before school opened, I got a call that there was a job at B.B. Comer. And the greatest thing ever happened to me.
What was the job?
Teaching vocational agribusiness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. And you continued in that class for how long?
Well, I did something very foolish, and I was at Comer 3 years. I had gotten tenure, but I had this crazy idea that I want to go back to South Alabama. I didn't pray about it. I didn't ask God about it. I just moved. We moved back to Sampson, Alabama. And Lord, I got beat up all year long, and I realized I had made a mistake, and had the opportunity to come back to B.B. Comer after that 1 year of intense training, I think it was. It took me 7 years to recover financially from that. But God taught me a great lesson then. He said, you better be praying about what you want to do and making moves, and just don't do them on a whim.
You may not remember this, but Coach Hayes brought us down there for a basketball game.
I remember it.
And I fouled out in the first half.
I had to help set all that up,
No, I blamed you for it ever since, too.
Well, that's okay.
How did you and Judy meet?
Well, it's real interesting. My first year, they hadn't built a new room for my class, so they put me in what was called a little theater. I don't know if you remember the little theater. It was up over the principal's office. And at the first pep rally, alumni could come back, but they had to go up in the balcony and watch the pep rally. And I can see her now. Her and Betty Ross were coming up the steps, and I was going down the steps to go to the pep rally. Mr. Lackey had asked me to open the pep rally with prayer. Something they don't do in schools anymore, obviously, but I did that, and Judy was engaged, and she told Betty Ross, she said, that's the man I'm gonna marry.
But she was engaged?
Yeah.
Wow.
She was. But anyway, Mr. Jernigan then introduced us at a football game. She loved Mr. Jernigan. And he was my co-ag teacher, And so he introduced us, and I'd been dating a girl for about a year, and things wasn't going good there, so I called Judy up. And
what was so special about Judy McMurphy? You guys were married for what, 50-something years?
53 and a half years.
Yeah.
She was just the person that God put in my life. I mean, it was so obvious, we just clicked. It was just love, and we could finish each other's thoughts and sentences. And
if somebody can finish your thoughts, Elsie, they had to love you, that's for sure.
That's true. That's exactly right.
Now, Judy, back some 18 months ago, went home to be with the Lord, and she had gotten sick, what, 5 or 6 months prior to that?
Yeah, she had a stroke at church and rushed to Birmingham. They did surgery, and she woke up the next day, knew everything, and I thought, well, you know, this is we'll get over this and things go right on. We had went through Spain rehab. She responded greatly. We went home, but we had to go back in March to put that bone flap back in, and she had 3 major brain things there within a 2-week period, and it just kind of went downhill, and we just never could get over that hump. But
now, on the day that Judy had some issues, she was at church on a Sunday morning, right?
Yeah, she was singing with the praise team on stage. Yeah, my granddaughter looked up there and said, I was looking at the screen singing, and if you can call it singing, and she said something's wrong with Mamie, and I never even thought about it. I just ran up and called her before she fell. And luckily, Dr. Clay Davis, his family was visiting, and he knew exactly what it was, and he made phone calls, and hospital up here responded so wonderfully, and what was real funny, they were going to fly her to UAB. They got out, loaded her on the helicopter, and started it up, and some kind of light came on and said, we can't do it. And they had to call the ambulance back. She later said, that was the roughest helicopter ride I've ever seen. I said, baby, you didn't go in a helicopter, you went in an ambulance. But
How have you recovered?
Huh?
How have you recovered?
Well, it's an ongoing process. One thing I did, 3 weeks later, I sat down and wrote 19 things I was thankful for. It took up 3 pages, and all of them included Judy. One of them, one thing I'm thankful for, I'm a member of the Gideons, and we have this program where you can buy Bibles in memory and in honor of people, and 1,250 Bibles were given in memory of Judy, and that would have thrilled her to death. Yeah.
She loved church, didn't she?
She did. She loved the Lord. I've got some of her journals that she'd do her devotion and got her prayer list in, and it's amazing people around Sylacauga, you know, that was on that prayer list.
We won't take time this morning to go through all of those, but some of the things that you're thankful for.
Well, one of the things, number 18, is she chose me. I told you she was engaged when we met, and there were several guys that would have loved to have married Judy.
I bet.
But she chose me.
Yeah.
So. But, you know, she had no pain in all of this. The people at Spain were wonderful, and they just fell in love with her, and she responded to their care. That's a great facility. And one of the things I was thankful for, that Jesus took Judy first, because she was more deserving. And I always said that if it hurt her only half as much as me, then I don't know where she could have taken it. I've gone back and added to that list a couple of things, and one of them has to do with this mess, this COVID mess now, because that would have really bothered her, having to deal with all of that. So God's timing is always
Now, was she in education as well?
Well, when we first got married, when she first got out of high school, she worked for Dora Thrash for a while, and then she worked at Avondale in the general office, and then she got a job at, she was substitute teaching some at Coma, but when I left Coma, Coach Hayes hired her as a school secretary. Claire Stewart was stepping out, and Judy got that job, and so she was school secretary for 13 years. And Coach Overton asked her one day, he said, I thought you were going back to college. She had a couple of years of junior college, and she said, well, Bobby, I'll be 40 years old when I graduate. And he said, how old are you going to be if you don't go? So she started going to UAB at night and got a degree in Spanish and English. And so she taught Spanish at BB Coma for 13 years. And one of the best things I hear from her former students is how much they loved her.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. You know, you spoke of Coach Overton. You guys developed a wonderful bond down through the years too at school. Yeah,
we did. I didn't have any idea about coaching or doing anything like that. They asked me if I would coach junior high basketball. I didn't know basketball from a cabbage head, but they helped me along, and I had the little guys, and we worked, and then they got me involved in football, and I loved that. And so he taught me a lot about coaching, and it was just a good close-knit group with Coach Hayes and Coach Brooks, and I never did get to coach with Jabbo, but I did with Larry White, and it was just a good work atmosphere. No profanity, we just all had like-mindedness in what we were trying to do.
A lot of people remember L.C. McMurphy from his days behind the microphone at Legion Stadium doing the public address for the BB Coma Tigers. And how did that come about?
Well, after I left with much prayer again, they were going to build a vocational school at Winterburg.
You decided you were going to include that prayer, didn't you?
I did. And Mr. Pitter came to me and asked me to open that school. And I said, well, you got to give me 2 weeks. And he did, and I prayed and counseled with different people about that before I left Coma again. But I went to Pitter, and it was the right move. It was just exactly what God wanted me to do. And I tried to continue helping coaching, but that was taken away from my job there. So I had to give that up, but I still knew all those kids, and Bobby wanted me to, he said, we need you to announce the games. And so I thought, well, I guess I can do that. And so I started off doing that and just kept on. And every year I was asked Coach Overton if he was going to retire, because when he retired, I was going to retire, but it didn't happen. They'd get a new coach, and they'd say, I said, well, you're a new coach, I'll stay with you. And we went through a series of them, and finally, when Adam came, he asked me, and I said, I've just got to give it up. I just can't keep doing it. And he got Keith to do it, and Keith does a good job. Keith's a fine person, and I love him. So it's in good hands.
Now, some of you who are watching in other parts of Alabama, you may have a public address announcer for your football games that do different things. Now, L.C. McMurphy, he did some different things. His mannerisms were unlike anybody's I've ever seen and heard doing a public address. I would do radio and television, so I could hear what he was saying. And some of that stuff didn't have anything to do with football, but it was fun, wasn't it?
Well, I tried to make it fun. You know, I probably entertained myself more than I did anybody else, but that was okay. I like to tell jokes, and
some of them jokes were so corny, though, L.C.
Well, everybody told me that, and but that's the only reason they remember me is because of the corny jokes. But I'll tell you this, Jimmy Dale, and this ain't on me or anything. People say I talk funny. I've been called weird. I've been called a lot of things. But I was on the campus at Jacksonville State University one time, handing out Bibles with the Gideons, and this young man come by, and I had a guy from Heflin stand there with me, and we was offering Bibles to these kids, and I gave this kid a Bible, and I said, now you need to study this. There's going to be a final exam on it. And he took a step or two away, and then he came back, and he said, did you used to announce ball games at BB Coleman? He recognized my voice. So every time I say Bobby, he asks me about that now. He says, anybody recognize your voice? So, yeah, I made it up as I went most of the time.
Well, where did the weather forecast come from?
Well, I love a newspaper. Of course, you can't hardly get them anymore, but I'd always look in the newspaper for the weather forecast, and I always had my pick cities. I had been to Casper, Wyoming a couple of times, and so I'd always say in beautiful downtown Casper, Wyoming, and it had, and I'd read what the weather was there, and always Jerusalem. I always like to choose Jerusalem, one of the most precious cities in the whole world, and it's always funny, their weather was about what our weather is, temperature-wise and so forth. And then I just picked the coldest spot and the hottest spot.
Pick Alaska, and it'd be 60, 65, 70 degrees in Sylacauga and be below zero in Alaska.
Oh, yeah.
Where did the first down and Dixie drug come from?
I don't know. It just one of those things that just popped out, First and 10, headed toward Dixie Drugs.
And you would spotlight people in the crowd, too, at the games.
Well, particularly old former football players, for some reason, I could remember the numbers better than I could the names, and so a lot of times I would do that. And, of course, I used to have a lot of fun with Hank Bullard, one of my precious friends that's gone on to heaven too, but I used to argue with Hank over the PA system, what his number was, and when he played,
Finally this morning, I want to talk about your faith. That's very important to you, and it was very important to you down through the years, and sometimes we didn't make the right choice, but God always loved us.
Well, thank him for that. I grew up in a little old country church, and Mom and Daddy didn't go that much. We had, but there were some faithful people, and I think of them often that would come by and pick up me and my sister and take us to Sunday school. And I love those times to get together with my age group, and we had some wonderful Bible teachers, and so it's just something that was that I always did. I got involved in trying to read the Bible every day. That stayed with me all the way through college, and to this day, there's very few times I miss reading the Bible every day. I just
learn something new every time.
I do. It's just amazing, just amazing. And I've been reading a lot. In fact, I read out of Psalms every night, last thing before I go to bed, and I read Psalm 77 last night, and I thought, Lord, have mercy. That's just like us right now, because the psalmist, Asaph, I think, was the one who was writing that. He said, He said, why have we lost your favor, God? And then he said, I know what I'll do. I will make an appeal to the Lord. And I thought, well, with what's going on right now, why aren't we making an appeal to the Lord? And I know many are, but, as a nation, and I was thinking about, don't let me go on too long now.
You're good.
I was thinking about Abraham Lincoln. I read recently about him, and he was such a failure. He lost everything, you know, just lost, and finally got elected president. And they said he was one of the most reviled presidents ever to live. He was, the media hated him. Everybody hated him, and yet we have this wonderful memorial up in Washington, and he is considered one of America's greatest presidents now. And we had this last president was greatly reviled, and I don't know what history will show one day, but I remember a story they told about finding Abe Lincoln as president, kneeling and praying, and they started talking about that, and he said, "Where else can I go but to my knees?" And so maybe Brother Mike, our interim pastor, said last Sunday, this could be the greatest altar call ever in the history of America, if we would view it that way and come back. And we've seen some things through the years. I was thinking of a series of events, you know. I remember in early 50s, I was scared to death about polio because it was in the papers all the time. But we've been through civil rights, some awful times, Vietnam, awful times, 9/11, awful times, and God has had his hand on our nation time after time after time, and we are turned back to him briefly sometimes, seem like, but then we get back complacent.
How would L.C. McMurphy like to be remembered?
As a good daddy and a good granddaddy. And hopefully as a man who loved the Lord and tried to serve him.
L.C. McMurphy, our guest this morning. I can't leave out the Gideons. You've been involved in Gideons for a number of years.
Yep, 40-something years. Wonderful organization, distributed Bibles all over the world, 200 plus countries and states and provinces, and God's word does not return void, you know. We have testimonies that all the time of people who come to Jesus because they read in his word, and God just revealed himself to them.
How did your faith carry you through the death of Judy?
Well, you know, it was real tough. I never got angry at God. I never got mad at God. But I guess I was struggling in loneliness, and I heard a preacher say, when God takes one of his own home with him, it's for his glory. And so I have to step back. It's not about me, it's about him.
Amen. All right. L.C. McMurphy, our guest this morning. L.C., Merry Christmas to you and to your family.
Too, Jimmy Dale.
And, thank you so much for coming today.
Well, thank you for asking.
Yes, sir. L.C. McMurphy, our guest this morning on Daybreak. We've got more to do right after this.